The dark price of perception. Carl Jung's warning, what if I told you that the very act of becoming more aware, of seeing deeper into reality, carries with it a price so dark, so heavy, that most people instinctively run from it. But what if Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, tried to warn us of this very burden? And what if we, in our modern obsession with truth, clarity, and self-awareness, are blindly walking into a fire we're not ready to handle? This video isn't about just understanding perception, it's about confronting what happens after the veil is lifted. Because perception, as Jung warned, isn't just about seeing more. It's about feeling more, suffering more, knowing more than you ever wanted to. And once you know, you can't go back. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, looking over a vast black sea. The sky is clear, the wind is calm, and behind you is a safe, warm cabin filled with distractions: Netflix, social media, your job, your routines, everything that keeps you comfortably numb. But something in you makes you step forward to the edge. You want to see. You want to understand life. You want to know what's real. That's what we all say, right? But what we don't realize is that the moment we see too much, the moment perception becomes truth, we lose something we can never get back: the illusion of safety.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that's because facing your soul means facing everything you've buried, every lie you've told yourself, every mask you wear, and every piece of you that doesn't fit your carefully constructed identity. Perception isn't just external, it's internal. And when you begin to truly perceive, you begin to see yourself. Not the version you post online, not the version your parents approve of, but the raw, unfiltered being that exists beneath all of it. And that is terrifying. You start to notice how much of your life is performative, how much of your relationships are based on pleasing others rather than being authentic, how much of your daily routine is designed to distract you from yourself. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the dark price of perception. It isolates you. It alienates you. It forces you to walk a quieter, lonelier path. And Jung knew this. He called it individuation, the process of becoming your true self. But make no mistake, individuation is not romantic. It is not beautiful. It is not Instagrammable. It is a descent into your own psychic underworld, where all the neglected parts of you live the shadow. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you realized something about yourself so uncomfortable, so jarring, that you almost wished you hadn't discovered it? Maybe you realized you're not as kind as you thought, or that your ambitions are rooted in insecurity, or that your sense of control is just fear in disguise. That's the beginning of perceiving. And it hurts. You see, perception isn't intelligence. It isn't data. It's integration. It's the merging of what you know with what you feel, what you fear, and what you are. And modern life doesn't want us to integrate. It wants us to fragment, and to keep our professional life over here, our personal life over there, our traumas stuffed in the attic, and our dreams locked in a journal. But the more we perceive, the more these fragments start to bleed into each other. And when they do, your old identity begins to fall apart. This is what Jung meant when he warned us. He wasn't saying don't perceive. He was saying beware. Because perception isn't just seeing what's out there, it's confronting what's in here. And most people aren't ready for that. Most people think they want the truth, but what they really want is comfort. Why do you think so many people turn to substances, distractions, and shallow success? Because they're running from the terrifying possibility that they are not who they pretend to be. And here's the twist: the more you perceive, the less you can be part of the herd. You think about that. The more you understand about the world, its contradictions, its hypocrisies, its illusions, the harder it becomes to play along. To go to work and pretend your job matters when you know it's killing your soul. To engage in small talk when you crave real connection. And to obey rules you know are arbitrary. Perception is rebellion. It's a silent war against the superficiality of the collective. And in that war, you often stand alone. That's why Jung said the true path of self-realization, the path of the individuated soul, requires great courage. Because once you open your eyes, you lose the right to look away. You see the suffering in others more clearly. You see the lies in systems you once trusted. You see the emptiness in the things you used to chase. And still, you must keep going. But here's the paradox: while perception isolates you, it also sets you free. Because once you've seen the truth, no one can manipulate you with lies. Once you've faced your shadow, no one can use your fears against you. Once you've embraced your whole self, the light, and the dark, you become invincible in a way that few will ever understand. So I'll ask you again, do you really want to see? Do you really want to perceive? Because once your eyes are open, there's no going back to sleep. The shadow beneath the smile: why we fear ourselves more than anything. Carl Jung gave us one of the most uncomfortable truths in human history, but that within each of us lies a shadow, a hidden self composed of everything we refuse to acknowledge. Not just the things we're ashamed of, but the things we've denied so long, we've forgotten they're even there. And here's the terrifying part: this shadow is not some abstract concept. It's alive. It's active. It influences your decisions, your relationships, your habits, and your fears without you even knowing. We like to think we fear the world. We fear war, poverty, abandonment, or death. But the truth is, those fears are surface level. What we fear most is ourselves. Look at your life. Look closely. How many times have you sabotaged yourself and didn't know why? How often have you met someone who triggered something deep inside you: anger, jealousy, fear, and you couldn't explain it? That's your shadow speaking. That's the part of you that's been exiled, locked away, neglected for years, maybe decades. And it's not evil. It's just unacknowledged. But the longer it stays in the dark, the more power it gains. Jung warned that what we don't make conscious, we will project. Meaning, the more we run from our shadow, the more it begins to control our life from behind the curtain. You don't see the strings, but you feel the pull. So many of us walk through life wearing masks. We smile when we want to scream. We agree when we want to disagree. We play nice, polite roles because deep down, we're terrified of what would happen if people saw who we really are. But here's the irony: we don't even know who we really are. Because we've spent so much time avoiding our deeper nature, our rage, our lust, our envy, our grief, that we've mistaken the mask for the face. Think about that. How much of your personality is actually you, and how much is just a disguise you've worn for so long it's become second skin? The tragedy of modern life is that we reward the mask. society loves well-behaved people. People who smile, comply, stay in line. But Jung's work shows us that healing doesn't come from looking good. It comes from confronting what's ugly. Not ugly in the physical sense, but ugly in the psychological sense, the parts of you that are messy, chaotic, intense. The parts that don't fit the narrative of who you think you're supposed to be. That's where the real work begins. And that's why most people never do it. Because it's hard. It's hard to admit you're not as kind as you pretend to be. It's hard to realize your compassion might be a way of controlling others. It's hard to see that your ambition might be fueled by unresolved fear, not passion. But until you face those truths, you'll remain a puppet of your shadow. And here's the kicker: the more you suppress it, the more it leaks out into your life in distorted ways: anxiety, depression, addiction, toxic relationships. The shadow doesn't disappear. It waits. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. How many things in your life have you blamed on fate, bad luck, or other people, when in truth, the call was coming from inside the house? That's not an accusation, it's an invitation. An invitation to stop running, to stop blaming, to turn inward and ask the question most people are too afraid to ask: what part of me have I been pretending doesn't exist? The reason this is so revolutionary and so threatening is because once you start this process, you stop being easy to control. You stop being predictable. You stop living according to others' expectations. That's the real danger to the system, a conscious human being. A self-aware individual who has integrated their shadow is a force of nature. They're not perfect, but they're whole. And wholeness is more powerful than goodness. Wholeness means you've faced your darkness and chosen to grow from it, not hide from it. It means you've stopped outsourcing your worth and started owning your truth, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unpopular. So I'll ask you, not as a philosopher, but as someone walking this path with you, when was the last time you sat with your shadow? Not judged it, not fixed it, just sat with it. Looked it in the eyes and said, "I see you. You are part of me." And that act alone is a revolution. Perception vs. reality. Why seeing clearly destroys illusions but builds integrity. We live in a world where illusion is not only accepted, it's celebrated. We filter our lives, curate our personalities, and perform our identities for likes, validation, and belonging. But Carl Jung warned us, the more we live within illusion, the more we drift from the soul. The more we chase the appearance of meaning, the less we actually experience it. This is the paradox of modern life. We're surrounded by more information than ever before, yet we are starving for truth. And the reason is simple: truth is costly. When you begin to see clearly, to truly perceive reality as it is and not as you wish it to be, you don't just gain knowledge, you lose illusion. And illusion, for many, is their only source of comfort. Think about your own life. How many beliefs have you inherited, not by choice, but by cultural hypnosis? How many values do you hold because they were handed to you, not because you examined them? How often do you believe something simply because it's easier than questioning it? That's what happens when perception is passive. You don't perceive reality, you absorb it like wallpaper. Jung believed that true perception requires active confrontation, but it requires that you challenge your assumptions, interrogate your identity, and face the uncomfortable possibility that the life you're living may not be your own. And here's the kicker: clear perception almost always begins with destruction. There's no gentle way to wake up from a dream. First, the dream must collapse. The illusions must fall apart. That's why people often resist awakening. Because perception, real perception, doesn't just show you the truth, it obliterates the false. And when that happens, the ego panics. It fights. It clings to the mask, to the script, to the belief that everything was fine just the way it was. But deep down, you know it wasn't. You know you've been living on autopilot. You know something inside you has been screaming for more truth, more depth, more realness. That's the voice of your soul, and perception is how it finally breaks through. But what happens after the illusions are destroyed? That's where integrity begins. Because when you no longer live by lies, not societal lies, not personal lies, you begin to rebuild yourself on solid ground. You stop pretending to be good and start striving to be honest. You stop chasing perfection and start seeking alignment. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" And that shift is everything. Because while illusion is about performance, integrity is about presence. It's about living in a way where your words, your actions, and your inner values are in sync. No more double lives. No more inner conflict. Just the quiet, powerful clarity of congruence. But let's not romanticize it. Living with integrity in a world built on deception is hard. It costs you relationships, opportunities, and sometimes even your sense of safety. Because people who are still living in illusion will be threatened by your clarity. They will call you arrogant, cold, or too intense. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have. You're no longer willing to trade authenticity for approval. You're no longer willing to dim your light just to fit in. And that makes you dangerous, but also deeply free. Here's a question worth asking: if everything false in your life were to collapse tomorrow, what would remain? What parts of you would survive the storm of truth? That's the foundation of perception. It's not just about learning, it's about unlearning. Unlearning the lies that told you who you should be. Unlearning the roles you've played to survive. Unlearning the shame that kept you small. And in that unlearning, you begin to remember who you really are. Jung believed that perception was the soul's way of returning to itself. That by seeing clearly, we don't just gain knowledge, we gain integrity. And integrity is not about being perfect. It's about being whole. It's about living in truth, even when that truth is inconvenient. Even when it breaks your heart. Because in that heartbreak, in that collapse, something new is born. A self that is no longer afraid to see, and no longer afraid to be seen. So let me ask you, what illusion are you still clinging to? What truth are you afraid to face? And what would happen if, just for one moment, you let it all fall away? Freedom through fire, the final reward of radical self-perception. If you've made it this far, you've already walked through fire. You've stared into the mirror of your own psyche and begun to see what lies beneath the surface. But the journey doesn't end with awareness. It ends, or rather, begins again with liberation. Because once perception has destroyed every illusion you once clung to, you're left with something rare, something sacred, the chance to rebuild not from the outside in, but from the inside out. This is the final reward of radical self-perception, freedom. But make no mistake, this freedom doesn't feel like lightness at first. It feels like weight. It feels like responsibility. Real freedom isn't the absence of limits, it's the presence of truth. And truth has gravity. It grounds you. It strips away your excuses. It demands that you live with intention. And for the first time, you realize that no one is coming to save you, not your parents, not your partner, not your government, not your gods. You are the architect of your own soul, and no one else can build it for you. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the privilege of a lifetime being to become who you truly are. It's not a privilege given to everyone, it's a privilege earned through fire, and through the courage to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to rise from the ashes of your former self. You begin to realize that not everyone will come with you. Some people are too attached to their illusions. Some are too afraid of the mirror. And that's okay, because your path is no longer about being understood, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness, that's the real prize. It's not glamorous. It won't always feel good. But it will feel real. And in a world addicted to the artificial, realness is the rarest currency. But when you live from your true self, you no longer need to perform. You no longer need to impress. You don't chase love, you embody it. You don't seek validation, you radiate presence. You become a quiet storm of authenticity in a world that's forgotten what that even looks like. But let's be clear, the fire you walk through never goes out completely. Life will continue to test you. Shadows will resurface. Old wounds will reopen. But now, you face them with eyes wide open. You no longer fear the dark because you know it. You've made peace with your inner chaos. You've danced with your demons and lived to tell the tale. That's not weakness, that's sovereignty. And from that place of sovereignty, something miraculous happens. You begin to see others differently. You stop judging them for their masks because you remember when you wore your own. You stop trying to fix people because you understand that healing is a choice only they can make. You become a witness, a mirror, a presence, not a savior. And in doing so, you give others the greatest gift one soul can offer another, the space to become themselves. So here we are, at the end of the path, or perhaps the beginning of a new one. You've seen the cost of perception. You've walked through the collapse of illusion. You've faced your shadow, rebuilt your integrity, and stood in the fire of your own becoming. And now, you are free, not in the way the world defines it, but in the way the soul remembers it. So I leave you with one final question. One that only you can answer. Now that you've seen who you truly are, what will you do with that truth?